A devastating loss leads to an unexpected proposal. Will love and trust survive the storm, or will betrayal tear them apart? Discover the emotional journey of healing and resilience. The unexpected proposal. I remember the day like it was yesterday, even though it feels like a lifetime ago. My heart was heavy with grief, and I was still trying to process the tragic loss of my stepson, who had passed away just 4 weeks prior. As I sat down to share my feelings in a post on Reddit, I found myself needing to unravel a complicated situation that had landed on my doorstep. My husband, whom I had been happily married to for 3 wonderful years, had just dropped a bombshell on me. He approached me one evening, looking distressed, and said he needed to talk. I immediately sensed that this was going to be a conversation I wasn't prepared for. As it turned out, his ex-wife, my stepson's mother, had reached out to him with a request that turned my world upside down. She wanted him to be a sperm donor so she could conceive again using IUI or IVF. My husband, still grappling with his own grief, seemed to be considering it. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just a casual proposition. It felt like a dagger to my heart. I had been in my stepson's life since he was 2, and now I was faced with the prospect of my husband fathering another child with his ex. My mind was spinning. I had always known that my husband had a son from a previous relationship, but this conversation opened up a Pandora's box of emotions I wasn't ready to confront. As I sat there trying to digest what he had said, a wave of emotions washed over me. Anger, sadness, confusion, and a deep sense of betrayal. We had been trying to conceive our own child, and now I was being asked to share my husband's fatherhood with someone else. I felt lost, grasping for words to express my feelings without escalating the situation. I took a deep breath and told him I needed time to process this request. How could I possibly convey my feelings without coming off as unsupportive? It was a delicate balance, understanding his grief while also grappling with my own feelings of hurt and resentment. I became consumed by thoughts of how I would even bring this up in therapy when the time came. The next few days were a blur. I felt like I was on a roller coaster, riding the highs and lows of emotions. I knew I needed to talk to my husband more about this, but the fear of confrontation loomed over me. Would he understand my perspective, or would he view me as selfish for not wanting to help his ex? Little did I know, this was only the beginning of a tumultuous journey I hadn't signed up for. Part 2. The weight of grief. The days rolled on, and I found myself in a daze, trying to manage the whirlwind of emotions. My heart ached not only for my own loss, but for the pain my husband and his ex were enduring. I knew that grief could cloud one's judgment, but part of me couldn't help but feel anger toward the situation. Here I was trying to be a supportive wife, yet I was being asked to share my husband in a way I never anticipated. In the following days, I decided to take action. I reached out to my therapist, hoping to gain clarity and some coping strategies. I also found a couples therapist with experience in grief counseling. I wanted to ensure that we addressed this situation with care, not just for my sake, but for my husband's and his ex-wife's as well. I hoped that professional guidance would help us navigate this rocky terrain together. When I finally got home from work one night, my husband approached me with a heavy heart. He had spoken to his father about the situation, and it seemed that conversation had shifted something in him. He was visibly upset, and as he broke down and apologized, I felt a flicker of hope that we could confront this together. He explained that he had initially been confused. His excitement for starting a family with me had been overshadowed by the deep grief he felt after losing his son. It made sense that he was struggling to reconcile his feelings about being a father again while mourning. As he spoke, I could see that he was starting to recognize the absurdity of the request from his ex. It was a relief to hear him acknowledge that it was not the right time for any of us to make significant decisions. We talked late into the night, and by the end, we reached some agreements. He would limit contact with his ex while we explored how we could help her financially without getting tangled in a co-parenting situation. The idea of offering support made sense to me. It felt right to help, but I also understood the boundaries we needed to set. I was cautiously optimistic, but the emotional weight of the situation still lingered heavily in the air. As we wrapped up our conversation, I couldn't shake the feeling that more was to come. I felt like we had made progress, yet I knew we were only scratching the surface of. What other surprises lay ahead? As I drifted off to sleep that night, I couldn't help but wonder how much more complicated things could get. Part 3. The unraveling truth. Weeks passed and things started to feel a little more stable. My husband and I had begun attending therapy together, and I felt a renewed sense of hope that we could navigate this storm. However, I was still haunted by the request his ex had made, and I couldn't help but feel that something was still amiss. Then, one evening, my world turned upside down once more. My husband, who had been carrying a heavy weight on his shoulders, finally broke down and admitted something that shattered my trust. He revealed that he and his ex had frozen embryos together during their relationship, something he had never mentioned before. It was as if a light had illuminated a dark corner of our relationship, and I was left feeling blindsided. I was in shock. All this time, I had thought his ex was asking him to be a sperm donor, but in reality, they had a plan in place long before our marriage. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. My heart raced as I processed the implications of this news. My husband had withheld such significant information from me, and I felt that trust eroding beneath my feet. To make matters worse, I learned that his ex was already in the process of using those frozen embryos and had achieved successful implantation. I felt a mix of emotions, anger, betrayal, and an overwhelming sense of sadness. How could he keep this from me? Did he not think I deserved to know about this part of his past? As I confronted him about the situation, I could see the panic in his eyes. He explained that he compartmentalized his feelings, trying to navigate the loss of our stepson while still maintaining some semblance of hope. But it felt like a betrayal I couldn't overlook. The idea that he had been planning to co-parent with his ex while we were trying to build our own family felt like a cruel twist of fate. I felt humiliated and confused. This wasn't just about grief anymore. It was about trust and commitment. I was torn between wanting to support his ex as she embarked on this journey and the bitterness I felt for being left out of such a monumental decision. I knew I needed time to think about what this meant for my future with my husband. Could I still see a path forward after this revelation? Or was it time to step away? Part 4. Finding my path. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself in a state of contemplation. I had been fighting the urge to spiral into despair, but the weight of betrayal loomed large. I couldn't shake the feelings of inadequacy and humiliation that had taken hold of me. I had dedicated my life to supporting my husband, and now I felt like an outsider in my own marriage. After several sleepless nights, I sought the guidance of my therapist once more. I needed clarity. During our sessions, I began to explore my emotions deeply, understanding that while my husband's grief was real, my feelings of betrayal were equally valid. I realized that I had to prioritize my own mental health. I began to set boundaries regarding my husband's communication with his ex. I knew that he needed to be there for her as a friend during her pregnancy, but not at the expense of our relationship. It was crucial to redefine our commitments to one another, especially as we faced this new reality together. One evening, I mustered the courage to sit down with my husband for what could be one of the most important conversations of our lives. I expressed my feelings openly and honestly, explaining how his withholding of information had affected me. I emphasized that while I understood his desire to support his ex during her grief, I couldn't continue to feel like a third wheel in our own marriage. To my surprise, he listened intently and expressed remorse for his actions. He acknowledged the impact of his decisions and vowed to be more transparent moving forward. It felt like a turning point for us. While the road ahead would not be easy, I felt a renewed sense of determination to rebuild our relationship on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. As we navigated our way through this challenging time, I realized that healing would take patience. Whether that involved supporting his ex during her pregnancy or focusing on our future together, I knew we were in it as a team. In the end, I learned that love could withstand even the most complicated of circumstances, as long as both partners were willing to communicate and grow together. This was our journey, and with time, I believed we could find a way forward, together.